Paramount Studios, Burbank, California. Spring 1953. The read-through for Sabrina began at 9 in the morning in a conference room that smelled like coffee and cigarette smoke. 3 actors sat around a table with their scripts. Humphrey Bogart, 54 years old, 2-time Academy Award nominee, one of the biggest stars in the history of Hollywood. William Holden, 35, fresh off his Oscar win for Starleg 17, his name on every marquee in America. And Audrey Hepburn, 24, who had just won an Academy Award for Roman Holiday, but still felt on mornings like this one, like a girl who had wandered into a room where she didn't quite belong. She didn't know it yet, but by the time filming wrapped, her life would be permanently changed. Not by the role, not by the costume fittings with Hubert de Givenchy, not even by the film itself, which would become one of the most beloved romantic comedies Hollywood ever produced. Her life would be changed by the man sitting across the table from her, the man who would become her guardian angel, her greatest love, and ultimately the source of the most devastating heartbreak she had ever experienced. The man Hollywood told her, in 100 different quiet ways, she was never supposed to fall for at all. This is the story of Audrey Hepburn and William Holden, not the version Hollywood wanted people to know, the real one, the one that ended with tears and a truth that could not be undone, and that shaped everything Audrey did for the rest of her life. Before that first read-through, before the cameras rolled on Sabrina, there was already tension in the room. Humphrey Bogart had wanted his wife Lauren Bacall cast in the title role. He had campaigned for it privately, pushed for it in meetings, believed it was rightfully hers. When Paramount chose Audrey instead, Bogart did not hide his opinion. He made it clear from the beginning that he considered Audrey inexperienced, unproven, unworthy of the role. He was civil enough in the formal moments, professional enough when the cameras were actually running. But in between takes, in the hallways, in the small exchanges that make up the texture of a film shoot, his attitude toward the young actress was cold, sometimes openly contemptuous. He had worked with the greatest stars of his generation. He had no patience for a girl who still asked too many questions and needed too many takes to get a scene right. William Holden was different from the first moment. He saw what Bogart refused to see, under the nervousness, under the self-consciousness, under the girl who apologized too often and sometimes lost her place in a scene. There was something extraordinary, a quality that was almost impossible to define and completely impossible to manufacture. Audrey Hepburn made you feel, when you looked at her, that she was looking directly back at you, not at the camera, not at the audience, at you. It was the rarest thing in the world, and Holden recognized it the way you recognize music you have heard before in a dream, something familiar that you cannot explain. He started looking out for her. Small things at first, a word of reassurance when a scene wasn't working, a laugh in the right moment when Bogart's coldness threatened to throw her off. He ran lines with her in the evenings, walked her through the rhythms of a Billy Wilder set, which had its own particular music and required a particular kind of attentiveness. Audrey, who had called herself a novice and meant it, later said Holden was her guardian angel during those early weeks, the person who made her feel like she belonged there. But director Billy Wilder saw none of it happening. He was watching the camera. He was solving the 100 problems a film set generates every day. He was managing Bogart's resentment and the daily script revisions and the complicated logistics of a major studio production. He had no idea that something else was developing in the margins of his film. People on the set told me later that Bill and Audrey were having an affair, he said years afterward, and everybody knew. Well, not everybody. I didn't know. Nobody told Wilder because everyone understood, without being instructed, that this was information that required protection. William Holden was married. He had been for 11 years, to a woman named Ardis Ankerson, who had taken the stage name Brenda Marshall. They had 3 children. He was one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood, a man whose face appeared on the cover of Life magazine, whose name above the title was a guarantee that audiences would buy tickets. And Audrey Hepburn was something even more fragile than a star. She was an image. The Cinderella image, as the studio called it. The girl from the fairy tale who had survived the war and arrived in Hollywood with her beautiful face and her impossible grace and her quality of seeming untouched by everything the world had tried to do to her. That image was worth an enormous amount of money. It could not survive a scandal. It especially could not survive a scandal involving a married man with children. So the people who knew kept quiet. The crew looked the other way. Hollywood, which had seen everything and protected everyone who was powerful enough to be worth protecting, closed ranks. What was actually happening between Audrey and Bill was not a casual affair. It was not the kind of on-set romance that burned bright for a few weeks and left nothing behind. Holden later said that before he even met her, he had a crush on her. He had seen Roman Holiday, he had watched her on screen and felt something he struggled to name. Then she walked into that conference room, and it was different from anything he had expected, because she was funnier than her screen presence suggested, and more vulnerable and more honest about the vulnerability, and the combination of those things undid him completely. After I met her, just a day later, I felt as if we were old friends, he said, and I was rather fiercely protective of her. Audrey called him the most handsome man she had ever met. She was not a woman who said things she did not mean. She had grown up during the German occupation of the Netherlands, had known genuine deprivation and genuine fear, and the experience had given her a precision with words, an instinct for honesty that people who had lived easier lives sometimes lacked. When she said Holden was the most handsome man she had ever met, she meant exactly that. She also meant more than that. She meant the way he listened, the way he laughed, the way he made her feel. On a set where one of her co-stars viewed her as an imposition, like she was exactly who she was supposed to be. In the evenings, after filming Wrapped, they would drive out of the city. Holden had a portable record player, and he would put it in the back of the car, and they would find a clearing somewhere outside Los Angeles, and they would put on ballet music, and sit in the dark and listen. Some of our most magic moments were there, he said later. Years later, when he was older, and the losses of his life had accumulated, and he could speak about certain things with the distance that only time creates. He said it the way you say something you have carried for a long time, something you have held carefully, turned over in your hands in the dark, made sure did not break. Audrey Holden knew, of course she knew. She had learned to know, across 11 years of a marriage that was complicated and imperfect, and periodically strained by her husband's drinking and his tendency, when he was far from home and under the particular pressure of a film set, to find comfort in the company of beautiful women. She had arrived at something like an arrangement with that knowledge. She had agreed, in the pragmatic way that some marriages survive what other marriages cannot, to look the other way when it was necessary. But when she began to understand that what was happening between Bill and Audrey was different, she drew a different line. This was not a brief distraction. This was a threat. She told her husband, directly and without ambiguity, stop seeing that woman. He didn't, not yet, because for the first time in a long time, possibly for the first time in his life, he was in something that felt like the real thing, and he was not ready to give it up. Audrey was not naive about the situation. She understood that Holden was married. She understood what that meant. But she had been raised to believe, with a faith that went bone deep, that certain things were more important than circumstances. Love was one of them, family was another, and the particular longing she carried since the age of 6, since the morning her father had walked out of their house in Brussels and not come back, was the longing for a family of her own, for a home that was real and permanent and could not be taken away. She wanted children, 3 or 4 of them. She had said so to friends, to the press, to anyone who asked. She did not intend to be a movie star forever. She intended to be a mother. It was, if she was honest, the ambition that mattered most. She allowed herself to believe, in those evenings in the clearing with the ballet music and the stars and Bill's voice in the dark, that this could become something, that the circumstances could change, that a man who loved her the way Holden loved her would find a way. The conversation happened somewhere toward the end of filming. The exact location, the exact words have been described in different ways by different people, but the substance of it is consistent across every account. Holden told Audrey the truth. He had had a vasectomy. The procedure had been performed at Ardis's insistence. Years before, after the birth of their children, it was irreversible. There would be no children with him ever, not for any woman. He told her he wouldn't divorce his wife either. Not the way she needed him to. Not in the way that would make what they had into what she wanted it to be. She cried like a hurt, bewildered child. That is the phrase one biographer used, drawing on accounts from people who were close to her at the time. She cried the way you cry when 2 things happen at once. When you lose the thing you thought you had, And when you realize you also lost the thing you thought was possible, the children she had been imagining, the house in the country, the life that would be ordinary in all the right ways, it was gone, and it had never existed, and he had known that from the beginning and had let her believe anyway. She ended the affair on the spot, not with anger, not with accusations. Audrey Hepburn, who had learned during the war to survive by going quiet, by going still, by finding the inner place where no one could reach her, ended it with the particular finality of a person who has stopped hoping for a different outcome. She said simply, "Oh, Bill," 2 words. The people who heard about that moment described it as the saddest sentence they had ever heard, not because of what it said, but because of what it didn't, because of everything it had given up on. Holden was devastated, not in the way that produces drama, but in the way that produces silence. He said later, many years later, that he had truly been in love with Audrey Hepburn, that she had been the love of his life, and that she would not marry him. He said it to friends, to journalists, to talk show hosts. Once, on a late-night television program, a host asked him directly with whom he had been most deeply, truly in love. Holden's face, deeply creased by then, pouched from years of heavy drinking, went through a change that everyone in the room noticed. He said 2 words through a cloud of cigarette smoke: Audrey Hepburn. Hollywood noticed what happened next as well. Within months of Sabrina wrapping, Paramount Studios arranged an engagement party. It was held, by a particular irony no one seems to have commented on at the time, at the home of William and Audrey Holden. The guests of honor were Audrey Hepburn and her new fiancé, actor and director Mel Ferrer. The two had met earlier that year and reconnected, and the announcement was made with the kind of speed that people who knew Audrey understood. She was not running toward Mel Ferrer. She was building the life that had been made impossible with someone else. She wanted children. Mel wanted to be with her. The rest would have to be worked out. She married Mel Ferrer on September 25, 1954, in a small ceremony in Switzerland, wearing a pink dress. She told a friend she wanted to keep it a dark secret, to have it without the press. She did not want cameras at the wedding. She wanted something that belonged only to the people inside it. In the years that followed, Hollywood kept Sabrina's secret. The film was released to acclaim. Audrey received her 2nd Academy Award nomination. The picture was a hit. Humphrey Bogart, who had treated her with contempt throughout filming, later apologized to director Billy Wilder before his death, acknowledging he had behaved badly. The movie became one of the most beloved of its era, a film people watched on Sunday afternoons and showed to their daughters and thought of when they thought of old Hollywood at its most elegant. No one talked about what had happened off camera. No one wrote about the clearing outside Los Angeles and the portable record player and the ballet music. No one described what Audrey looked like when she said, "Oh, Bill." The story was kept, the way Hollywood kept stories then, inside the walls of the industry, understood by everyone and spoken of by no one. 8 years passed. In 1962, Paramount Studios exercised an option in Holden and Hepburn's contracts. They were to make another film together. The studio had never stopped believing in their chemistry. They had seen what it looked like on screen. They wanted more of it. The film was called Paris When It Sizzles, a light romantic comedy set in Paris, and it should have been simple. It was not simple. Holden arrived at Orly Airport in Paris in the summer of 1962 and said later that he could hear his footsteps echoing against the walls of the transit corridor, just like a condemned man walking the last mile. He had not spent 8 years getting over Audrey Hepburn. He had spent 8 years not getting over her. The drinking, which had been a problem during Sabrina, had become something more serious, something that structured his days and showed on his face and alarmed the people who worked with him. Director Richard Quine, who knew Holden from an earlier film, rented a house next to the actors in Paris specifically to keep watch over him. The precaution was not enough. Holden arrived on set some mornings with his pet Galago, a small African primate, perched on his shoulder. He appeared on other mornings in states that the director described, trying to be diplomatic, as concerning. He checked himself into an alcoholic treatment facility mid-production. The final scene the script called for was never shot because Holden arrived with his arm in a splint, having crashed his sports car into a wall the night before. One night, in a moment that the people on set did not discuss publicly for many years afterward, he climbed a tree outside Audrey's dressing room window. He was drunk. He called her name. She did not respond. Whatever she said to him in that moment, whatever she communicated through the closed window, or the silence, or the refusal to open the door, sent him off on another long night. Quine later said, "Bill was like a punch-drunk fighter, walking on his heels, listing slightly, talking punchy. He didn't know he was drunk." Audrey had agreed to make the film in part because she hoped her presence might help him. She had not stopped caring about him. She had loved him, really loved him, and that kind of love does not vanish because the circumstances make it impossible. She wanted to believe that working together again might give him something to hold on to. Instead, she watched him drowning and could not throw the right rope. The film was completed, barely. Paramount shelved it for 2 years before releasing it in 1964, judging it unreleasable in its current state. Critics were unkind when it finally appeared. Variety called it marshmallow weight hokum. What they did not note, because they could not know, was how much of the real story was visible on screen. Holden's character was a screenwriter who drank more than he wrote, who confessed at the film's end to being an old washed-up alcoholic, who did not deserve love or a happy ending. He was playing himself, more honestly than most actors ever get to, with Audrey standing across from him and looking at him with eyes that the camera read correctly, even if audiences couldn't fully understand what they were seeing. When the film came out in America, a journalist writing about the promotional photographs noted that the still images of Holden and Hepburn would touch off a forest fire in the dead of winter. He meant it as a compliment about their chemistry. He was right, but not quite in the way he intended. Holden's marriage to Ardis eventually ended. In 1972, he began a 9-year relationship with actress Stephanie Powers. He found in his later years a passion for wildlife conservation in Africa that gave him a purpose he had been searching for. He established a wildlife conservancy in Kenya. He was trying, in the way that people try when they have made a wreck of certain things, to build something that would outlast him and justify the years. On November 12, 1981, William Holden was alone in his apartment in Santa Monica. He had been drinking. He slipped on a rug and struck his head against a bedside table. The wound was serious. The medical examiner's report would later establish that he had been conscious for at least half an hour after the fall. He did not call for help. He bled to death alone in his apartment. He was 63 years old. Audrey was at her home in Tolochenaz, Switzerland, when she heard. She did not speak about it publicly. She did not give interviews on the subject, but the people close to her knew what she had felt for him, and they understood what the news cost her. The man who had called her the love of his life was gone. The clearing outside Los Angeles was gone. The ballet music was gone. The part of 1953 that had been the most alive she had ever felt was sealed permanently behind the date of November 12, 1981. She had 2 sons by then, from her 2 marriages. Sean from Mel Ferrer, Luca from Andrea Dotti, her second husband. She had the children she had always wanted. She had built the family her father had failed to give her, that Holden had been unable to give her, by finding the people who could. She was proud of her sons with a fierceness that people who knew her described as the defining fact of her private life. But she kept a picture of Holden. Several people who visited her home in Switzerland in the years after 1981 mentioned seeing a photograph that she had not put away, a photograph of a man with a face that even in middle age, even with the years of drinking visible in its lines, was still remarkable. She never explained it. She did not need to. Some things do not require explanation to anyone who has paid attention. What Hollywood had tried to hide in 1953, what it had kept inside its walls and protected from the press, and managed with the particular efficiency of an industry that understood the value of certain silences, was not a scandal. Scandals are things that look simple from the outside, things that can be summarized in a headline and understood in a sentence. What happened between Audrey Hepburn and William Holden was not that. It was a love story that could not survive the facts of their lives. It was a woman who knew exactly what she wanted and had the courage to walk away when she understood she could not have it, not with him. It was a man who knew he had let something irreplaceable walk out of a clearing outside Los Angeles. and who spent the rest of his life carrying that knowledge in the particular way that some people carry the heaviest things, which is to say, visibly, in their face, in their choices, in the two words they say when someone finally asks the right question. Audrey Hepburn risked everything in 1953 for a man Hollywood said she was not supposed to love. She risked her image, the Cinderella image that the studio had built and needed to protect. She risked her career, which was new and fragile, and had not yet become the monument it would eventually be. She risked the thing that mattered most to her, which was not fame, and had never been fame, but the possibility of a life that was real and permanent and full of children. She lost him, but she did not lose herself. She walked away from a clearing outside Los Angeles and toward a life that was smaller in some ways and larger in others. A life that eventually led her to the children she had always wanted, and then to the children of Ethiopia and Somalia, who had no one, and to the UNICEF work that defined her last years and gave her grief somewhere to go.